All right, get ready because we're about to take a deep dive into Bulgaria. You've sent me a ton of articles, research notes, like a huge pile. Looks like we're going for a full picture of this place.
Yeah, there's a lot to explore here. What makes Bulgaria unique? That's what we're going to try to figure out. We'll look at their history, their geography, even their place in the world today.
I'm always up for a historical treasure hunt. But first, I can't help but notice the name Bulgaria itself. What's the origin story there?
So Bulgaria actually comes from the Bulgars, a Turkic tribe who founded the first Bulgarian Empire. Now, the exact meaning of their name, still up for debate, but some scholars connect it to words like mixing, shaking, or even rebelling.
Ooh, a bit of mystery right from the start. Rebels and mixers. I wonder if that hints at what's to come in Bulgaria's story.
It might, but even before the Bulgars arrived, there was already a sophisticated culture in this region. Have you heard of the Varna necropolis? It's incredible they found these amazingly well-preserved gold artifacts there, dating back over 6,000 years.
Wait, you're saying older than the pyramids? Right there in Bulgaria. That's mind-blowing. What does a discovery like that tell us?
Well, it kind of challenges our assumptions about early European societies. The Varna necropolis points to a level of social complexity and craftsmanship that's way older than a lot of other well-known civilizations. Europe's story is full of surprises, isn't it?
It makes you wonder what other secrets are still waiting to be discovered. But moving on, Bulgaria's location has always made it a crossroads for different empires. We see influences from the Thracians, the Romans, and of course the Ottomans. So starting with the Thracians, who were they and what did they bring to the mix?
The Thracians are fascinating. They were really skilled metal workers, and their influence even seeped into Greek mythology. Think about Orpheus, the musician who went to the underworld, or Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstasy. Both of them have Thracian roots.
So they weren't just crafting metal, they were crafting myths too. But did their culture survive? I mean, what happened to them in the end?
Well, they faced a lot of invasions over time. Eventually, they became part of the Roman Empire. But their legacy lives on in subtle ways. You can still find echoes of Thracian culture and Bulgarian folklore, some of their traditions, even in the name of their rose oil industry, which we'll talk about later.
So they weren't completely wiped out. Okay, and then came the Ottomans, who ruled for a long time. How did that period shape what we see in Bulgaria today?
The Ottoman Empire's impact is undeniable. It was a difficult period for Bulgarians, a time of cultural suppression and heavy taxes.
Yeah.
But a lot of Bulgarians really held on to their Orthodox Christian faith. The Ottomans even recognized this and created the rum millet system, which basically gave Orthodox Christians within the empire some degree of self-governance.
It's interesting, almost like a state within a state. So even under Ottoman rule, there was this drive to hold on to a distinct Bulgarian identity.
Exactly. Think about the role of monasteries, isolated and hidden away. The clergy, they became the protectors of the Bulgarian language and traditions. Even today, the strength of the Bulgarian Orthodox Church shows how that spirit endured.
So, faith was a way to resist cultural assimilation. But let's shift gears and talk about Bulgaria's geography. It's landlocked, right? But looking at a map, it's obviously pretty geographically diverse. You've got the Balkan Mountains running through it.
You're right, landlocked doesn't really capture it all. Bulgaria has these amazing alpine peaks, like Musala, the highest peak in the entire Balkan range, and then you have the coastline along the Black Sea. But here's a surprise for you. Bulgaria is considered a biodiversity hotspot.
Wait, a biodiversity hotspot? I always thought those were in places like the Amazon rainforest. What makes Bulgaria so special in that way?
Bulgaria has an incredible variety of plants and animals. We're talking 93% of European mammal species, almost half of Europe's butterfly species, and a third of its plant species. It's remarkable.
Wow, that's impressive. Mountains, beaches, a treasure trove of biodiversity. I'm adding Bulgaria to my travel list. Okay, let's talk politics now. You mentioned some concerns about the state of their democracy. What's going on there?
It's a bit complicated. Bulgaria transitioned to democracy after the fall of communism. But there are some warning signs. The Freedom House report raises some serious concerns about media freedom, saying it's declining and growing government control over information.
So they're a democracy on paper, but maybe not in practice. What are the specific issues they're facing?
The Democracy Index actually classifies Bulgaria as a flawed democracy because of these issues. And corruption is a big problem. They rank pretty low on the Corruption Perceptions Index. All this was before they joined the Schengen area this year, which is supposed to make it easier for people to move freely within Europe.
It's a big step to take with those kind of problems hanging over their head. What could be the consequences, especially with those concerns about corruption?
That's a great question. It's something to think about as we dig deeper into Bulgaria's economic and social landscape. But there's good news too. There are some bright spots amidst the challenges.
Okay, I'm ready for some good news. What are these unexpected strengths you've found?
Well, one thing that might surprise you is that Bulgaria is a major producer of lavender and rose oil. You probably use products every day that contain these oils, things like perfumes and cosmetics.
So it's more than just yogurt and shopska salad. Interesting. What about their tech sector? I saw some references to Bulgaria's history with technology. What's the story there?
It's a pretty fascinating story, actually. Back during the Soviet era, Bulgaria was known as the communist Silicon Valley. They were tasked with producing computing technology for the Eastern Bloc. But their emphasis on teaching computing skills in schools had a kind of unintended consequence. Bulgaria ended up being a hotbed for some of those early computer viruses that caused so much trouble in the 80s and 90s.
Hold on, are you saying those old school viruses I used to hear about? Some of them came from Bulgaria. That's wild. But what about today? Have they managed to move past that and build a modern tech industry?
Oh, absolutely. Today, they're actually a regional leader in high-performance computing. In fact, they're going to be hosting one of the 8 petascale Euro HPC supercomputers. These are some of the fastest computers in the world. And get this, they've even made some pretty significant contributions to space exploration.
Space exploration, that's a twist I didn't see coming. What have they been up to in space?
Well, Bulgarian scientists are the ones who developed those special greenhouses that were used to successfully grow wheat on the Mir space station. It's a testament to their scientific ingenuity.
Hold on, they grew what in space? Wheat. Wow, that's really impressive. Okay, let's switch gears again and talk about demographics. One thing that jumped out from your research is that Bulgaria has one of the oldest populations in the world. Why is that?
It's a combination of things. They have a low birth rate, and their death rate is relatively high, partly due to things like poverty and access to health care. And then you also have immigration, young people leaving to find better opportunities in other countries.
That's a lot for any country to deal with, especially one that's still in transition after the fall of communism.
You also mentioned something about functional illiteracy in your notes. What's the situation there?
Well, their basic literacy rates are high. But recent PISA studies showed a pretty worrying trend, a big drop in reading and science comprehension among ninth graders. Almost half of them were classified as functionally illiterate.
That's alarming. What are the factors behind that decline in education?
It's a complex issue. For one thing, they spend way less on education than the EU average. There are also concerns about teacher training, whether the curriculum is up to date, and if the education system is actually preparing students for the modern world.
So it sounds like a systemic problem that needs a system-wide solution. But let's end this part on a positive note. We've explored some of the tougher aspects of Bulgaria's story. But what about that vibrant cultural tapestry you mentioned? What makes their culture so unique and fascinating? Well, you can't talk about Bulgarian culture without mentioning fire. It plays a central role in a lot of their traditions and festivals. Like the kukuris, these are masked figures who do these elaborate dances during different festivals, and they often incorporate fire into their performances.
Oh, wow, that sounds intense. Are fire dancing rituals common in Bulgaria? Tell me more.
They also have Nestinarstvo, which is a fire dancing ritual that has roots going all the way back to ancient Thracian times. It's so unique that UNESCO recognized it as intangible cultural heritage.
Wow, fire dancing with ancient roots. That's definitely something I'd love to see. What about their music? I've heard bits and pieces, but tell me more about the Bulgarian soundscape.
Bulgarian folk music is truly special. It's known for its haunting melodies, complex rhythms, and the use of traditional instruments like the gadulka and the gaida. One of the most fascinating things about it is their use of irregular time signatures, which you don't find in a lot of European music. And believe it or not, the Bulgarian State Television Female Vocal Choir actually won a Grammy Award back in 1990 for their incredible folk music performances.
A Grammy? That's amazing. But we've only just begun to explore Bulgarian culture. There's still their literature, their visual arts, even their influence on pop culture. But we'll have to leave it there for now. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the heart and soul of Bulgaria.
We'll be back soon to uncover more surprises and hidden gems from this remarkable country.
Welcome back to our deep dive into all things Bulgaria. Last time we dug up some really interesting stuff about their history, geography, and even their connection to space exploration. Who knew?
Yeah, Bulgaria is definitely full of surprises, and we've only just scratched the surface of their cultural heritage.
So true. We were just about to dive into their literary scene. Where should we start?
We'll picture this. Back in the 10th century, Bulgaria was like this cultural hub. They had the Preslav and Ohrid literary schools, and these schools actually played a huge role in shaping Slavic culture as a whole.
Hold on. Bulgaria was a major influence on Slavic culture. How so?
Think about it. These schools were centers of learning, spreading literacy, and Christian teachings to the Slavic world. And get this, the Cyrillic script, the one used in Russia, Serbia, and other countries today, it was developed at the Preslav Literary School.
So the Cyrillic alphabet, which is used by millions of people today, originated in Bulgaria.
Wow, that's amazing how something that seems like a small detail from history can have such a huge impact. What happened to Bulgarian literature after this golden age?
Well, as we've seen, Bulgaria has had its share of turmoil. Unfortunately, when the Ottomans conquered Bulgaria, a lot of their literary treasures were lost. It wasn't really until the 19th century, during their national revival, that Bulgarian literature found its voice again.
This national revival period, it sounds like a major turning point for Bulgaria. What kind of literature emerged during that time? It was all about rediscovering their identity and fighting for independence. Authors like Ivan Vazov really captured that spirit. His novels and poems explored everything, the struggles of rural life, the political chaos of the time. He's considered a cornerstone of modern Bulgarian literature.
So he was like their national voice, giving expression to a nation that was yearning for freedom. Were there other notable writers from this time who contributed to this literary resurgence?
Oh, definitely. Aleko Konstantinov is another key figure. He wrote this satirical novel called Beganyo. It's really witty but also insightful, a critique of Bulgarian society at the time. And you can't forget the poets like Pinchar Slavikov and Peyo Yavarov. They brought this depth of symbolism and philosophical exploration to Bulgarian literature.
It's amazing how literature can really reflect the soul of a nation. And I know the 20th century brought its own set of challenges and influences, especially with the rise of communism. How did that impact their literary scene?
Well, under communism, literature kind of became this tool for social and political commentary. Authors like Giomilev and Nikola Vapsarov explored themes of social justice and revolution, often aligning with Marxist ideologies. But of course, there was also censorship and repression, which definitely stifled creativity for a lot of writers.
It's a reminder that even when you're striving for a better world, freedom of expression can get lost in the process. Did any Bulgarian writers achieve international recognition during this time?
Yes, actually. Tivetan Todorov, a literary critic and philosopher, became really influential for his work on structuralism and literary theory. And although he wasn't born in Bulgaria, Elias Canetti, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature, spent his early years there. He drew on those experiences in his writing. So Bulgarian voices have definitely made an impact on the global stage.
From ancient schools to Nobel Prize winners, it's clear that Bulgaria has a rich literary heritage. But let's switch gears from words to images. What about their visual art scene? What kind of artistic treasures can we find there?
Well, Bulgarian visual art is just as diverse as their history. They've got this amazing tradition of religious art with beautiful frescoes, murals, and icons, a lot of them going back to the medieval period. The Tarnovo Artistic School was a big influence on this type of religious art. But like their literature, the Ottoman conquest kind of led to a decline in artistic output.
So another cultural revival in the 19th century. What characterized the art that emerged after the Ottomans?
Bulgarian artists, driven by this wave of national awakening, really wanted to create art that reflected their own identity. Zahari Zograf, who was a key figure during this time, is known for his iconic depictions of saints and biblical scenes. His work played a big part in reviving a sense of Bulgarian artistic pride.
Sounds like a fascinating blend of religious tradition and national identity. Did any artists break away from these more traditional styles?
Yeah, in the early 20th century, you start to see this shift towards more modern and experimental styles. Artists like Ivan Makvichka and Vladimir Dimitrov tried to capture the essence of everyday life in Bulgaria, the landscapes, the villages, the people. And then there's Slatiwo Boyajiv. He brought this incredible vibrancy and expressionistic style to his paintings, which added a whole new dimension to Bulgarian art.
So, a real explosion of creativity. And speaking of making a statement, we can't forget Christo. He's probably the most internationally recognized Bulgarian artist.
You're so right. Christo and Jean-Claude, his wife and artistic partner, became world famous for their large-scale environmental installations. Remember when they wrapped the Reichstag in Berlin? Or the Pont Neuf Bridge in Paris? Their work really pushed boundaries and sparked a lot of conversations about public space and how we perceive art.
Their work is definitely unforgettable. It seems like Bulgarian artists, whether they're working with words, paint, or even fabric, have a real talent for leaving a mark. But we've talked about words and images, now let's talk about sounds. We touched on Bulgarian folk music earlier, but is there more to their musical landscape than just those haunting folk melodies?
Oh, there's so much more. Bulgarian music is incredibly diverse, reflecting all the different layers of their culture. While folk music has a special place in their hearts, they've also made their mark on classical music, jazz, and even pop.
Tell me more. Where did Bulgarian classical music get its start?
The roots of Bulgarian classical music go back to the 19th century, during that period of national revival we were talking about earlier. Emanuel Manolov is considered the pioneer. He composed the very first Bulgarian opera in 1890.
Wow, so they have a long opera tradition too. Did any Bulgarian composers gain international recognition?
Absolutely. In the 20th century, composers like Pancho Vladimirov and Petko Stenov gained international acclaim for their symphonies, ballets, and operas. Vladimirov in particular was really popular, known for blending Bulgarian folk elements with this romantic sensibility. And it wasn't just composers. Bulgaria produced a whole generation of world-class opera singers, people like Gana Dimitrova and Boris Christoph. They performed on the biggest stages all over the world.
So they were exporting both the music and the talent. Sounds like a golden age for Bulgarian classical music. What about other genres? Did any Bulgarians make a splash in jazz or pop?
Well, Bulgarian jazz is this really cool fusion of traditional Balkan rhythms and harmonies with classic American jazz. Milcho Leviev, who was a famous pianist and composer, really bridged those two worlds. And then there's Ivo Papazov, a master clarinet player who blends jazz with Bulgarian folk music, creates this incredibly energetic and captivating sound.
I'm sensing a theme here. Bulgarian music seems to be all about these unexpected combinations and pushing creative boundaries. What about pop music? Any Bulgarian pop stars making waves on the international scene?
Well, one name that comes to mind is Mira Arroyo. She's the bassist and backing vocalist for Ladytron, a British electronic band. And her Bulgarian heritage kind of subtly influences their music, adds a layer of mystery and depth to their electronic pop sound.
But we can't talk about culture without considering the media, right? What's the media landscape like in Bulgaria, and what can it tell us about the state of their democracy?
That's a great point. The state of media freedom is crucial for a healthy democracy. Back in the early 2000s, Bulgarian media was actually considered pretty unbiased and free from government interference. But things have shifted since then.
Oh.
How so? Unfortunately, freedom of the press in Bulgaria has been declining in recent years. They're ranked pretty low on the World Press Freedom Index, which raises some serious concerns about censorship and the erosion of democratic values.
That's worrying. What are some of the things contributing to this decline in press freedom?
One big factor is the growing influence of oligarchs in the media landscape. Certain people, often with political connections, have gained control of media outlets, and they use them to push their own agendas or silence anyone who criticizes them. It raises serious questions about transparency and accountability in Bulgarian society.
It's a stark reminder that the fight for a truly democratic society is a constant battle, even within the EU. But despite these challenges, it seems like Bulgarians have a lot to be proud of.
Absolutely. Their cultural heritage, from those ancient Thracian roots to their innovations in art, music, and literature, it's incredibly rich and diverse. It really reflects a nation that has faced so many obstacles, but they've always found a way to express their creativity and resilience.
It's a powerful testament to the human spirit. But let's shift our focus now to what daily life is like in Bulgaria. We've explored their history, their artistic achievements, their political landscape, but what's it like for the average person living there? What are their everyday experiences, the things they enjoy, the things they struggle with?
It's a great question to lead us into the final part of our deep dive. We'll look at the heart of Bulgarian life, their cuisine, their social customs, the economic realities they face, and their hopes for the future. It's a side of Bulgaria that's often overlooked, but just as fascinating.
I'm excited to get a taste of authentic Bulgarian life. Stick with us, everyone, as we wrap up our deep dive in part 3. Welcome back to the final part of our Bulgarian adventure. We've journeyed through their history, uncovered cultural gems, navigated political landscapes, and even explored their media scene. Now I'm really curious to get a sense of everyday life in Bulgaria.
Well, I think the best way to start is with something we can all relate to: food. Bulgarian cuisine is this delicious blend of Balkan, Mediterranean, and Middle Eastern flavors. It really reflects their history, geography, and their incredible hospitality.
My stomach's rumbling already. What are some must-try dishes?
You can't talk about Bulgarian food without mentioning shopska salad. Just imagine this. Fresh, juicy tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, onions, all chopped up and mixed together, and then topped with crumbled sirene that's their delicious white cheese. It's so simple, refreshing, and you'll find it on every Bulgarian table.
Sounds like the perfect summer salad. What else should I try?
If you want to experience true Bulgarian comfort food, you have to try banitsa. It's this flaky pastry filled with all sorts of goodness, cheese, spinach, meat, you name it. It's traditionally a breakfast food, but let's be real, banitsa is amazing any time of day.
I'm a sucker for a good pastry. And for the meat lovers out there, is there anything with a little more spice?
Oh yeah, definitely. Try lukanka. It's a spicy cured sausage that's bursting with flavor. It's a real Bulgarian delicacy.
Okay, my culinary to-do list is growing longer by the minute, but let's move beyond the dinner table. What about their social customs and traditions? What makes Bulgarian culture so special in that way?
One tradition that I find really charming is Martinitsa. On March 1st, people exchange these little red and white bracelets or dolls called Martinitsi. They're meant to symbolize spring, new beginnings, good health.
Oh, that's such a sweet tradition. It's like a little reminder that winter's over and better days are coming. And we talked before about those fire dancing rituals. Are there any other big celebrations or festivals that really capture the spirit of Bulgaria?
Bulgarians love to celebrate. Their festivals are so lively and colorful, often with traditional music, dancing, and costumes. Remember the kukri we talked about? Those masked figures that do these elaborate dances to scare away evil spirits, especially around New Year's. And then there's Nestinarsvo, the fire dancing ritual, performed in a few villages on the feast day of Saints Constantine and Helena. It's this amazing mix of ancient pagan beliefs and Christian traditions.
It sounds like those festivals are just bursting with energy and tradition. I'd love to see that for myself sometime. But everyday life isn't always a party, of course. What are some of the economic realities that ordinary Bulgarians are facing?
Well, Bulgaria has definitely made progress since becoming a democracy, but a lot of people still struggle financially. The average salary is pretty low compared to other European countries, and unemployment, especially for young people, is a big concern. This has led to a significant brain drain, with many skilled Bulgarians leaving to find better opportunities elsewhere.
It's tough, that desire for a better life pulling people away from their home. What about the cost of living? How far does a typical salary go in Bulgaria?
Generally, the cost of living is lower than in Western Europe, but it's been going up steadily. Things like housing, utilities, transportation, they can take up a big chunk of people's income. That doesn't leave much for anything extra. It's a real challenge for many families just to make ends meet.
It's a familiar story. Unfortunately, trying to balance those rising costs with limited income, people all over the world are dealing with that. But even with these difficulties, what kind of hopes and dreams do Bulgarians have for the future?
Even with the challenges, Bulgarians are resilient and hopeful people. They have a strong sense of community and a deep love for their country. A lot of people are looking towards the potential benefits of being in the EU, hoping for more investment, more jobs, a better quality of life. There's this belief that with some time and effort, Bulgaria can overcome these economic hurdles and create a brighter future.
It sounds like a mix of cautious optimism and determination to build a better tomorrow. And we touched on Bulgaria's goal of joining the Eurozone earlier. How do people feel about that? Is it a big topic of discussion there?
Oh, it's definitely a hot topic. Some people see it as a path towards economic stability and being more connected with Europe. Others are worried about the potential downsides, things like losing control over their monetary policy or facing higher prices. It's a big decision with both potential advantages and risks. It's something Bulgarians are really wrestling with as they figure out their future.
It's definitely a decision with huge consequences. You know, throughout this deep dive, I've been really struck by the resilience of the Bulgarian people. They've been through so much empires, occupations, political turmoil, economic hardship, but they've managed to hold on to their culture, their traditions, their hope.
I completely agree. Their story is really a testament to the human spirit. They faced incredible challenges, but never lost sight of who they are. From their ancient Thracian roots to their modern-day ambitions, they have this amazing ability to adapt and evolve while staying true to what makes them uniquely Bulgarian.
It reminds us that history isn't just about dates and events. It's about the human stories that unfold within those moments. And Bulgaria's story is one of resilience, creativity, and this deep connection to their heritage. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to remember?
I think the most important thing is to remember that Bulgaria is a nation at a crossroads. They're navigating the complexities of the 21st century, trying to balance their rich traditions with the demands of a world that's constantly changing. How they handle these challenges will determine not only their own future, but also the future of Europe as a whole.
It's a story that's still being written, a story full of potential and possibility. And for our listeners, as you continue exploring Bulgaria, consider this. How will this nation, with its ancient roots and modern dreams, shape its own future and contribute to the ever-evolving story of Europe in the years to come? It's a question worth thinking about.
It is, and it's a question that will continue to unfold as Bulgaria writes the next chapter in its extraordinary story.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible deep dive into Bulgaria. We'll see you next time for another fascinating adventure.